How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather SpongeBob 1000, and in this video we're going to focus on the next few winter storms that are expected to move through the eastern half of the United States and determine the chance you will experience heavy snowfall associated with these next few winter storms that are expected to move through. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. So let's begin by taking a look at the European model at this time, and the European model for the time frame between Thursday and Friday does expect a winter storm to move through the Midwest and the Northeast, where we do see that the European model right around the Thursday time frame wants to develop a low right around the Midwest. This is as a result of a trough that's coming off the Pacific Northwest that's expecting to move further westward and of course interact with the very warm and moist air mass that's located right around the southeast, and that will allow this low pressure system to strengthen and widen its precipitation area, and a large portion of that precipitation will fall in the form of snow, especially on the northern side, where we do see heavy snowfall now throughout Iowa, right around Des Moines. You could experience very heavy snowfall associated with this storm, as well as Chicago experiences heavy snowfall. This includes also the northern portion of Indiana, the southern portion of Michigan, and even Cleveland, Ohio could get involved with some snowfall. And we even see that snowfall extend as far east as Pennsylvania. However, this isn't the only disturbance, of course, we're taking a look at, because there could be the possibility of another snowstorm moving through the same areas, especially bringing heavy snowfall now to more so Michigan. And we could see snowfall right around the Northeast, and for many of you guys around the Northeast, this could be potentially your first snowfall. And while the European model doesn't necessarily show a heavy amount of snowfall associated with the storm in the Northeast, there's still, of course, that possibility that we could see a shift in the forecast to where maybe we do see a more significant snowstorm for the Northeast, because I'm going right around 7 to 8 days out with this forecast. So there's still a lot of time for the forecast to change, for the certainty, for the confidence to get higher. So we're just going to need to wait and see over the next several runs how the European model shifts its forecast. And it's a different story when we take a look at the GFS model, where the GFS model wants to develop a nor'easter, and eventually the European model eventually does develop a nor'easter, even more in the long-term future, where we do see a 985 low pressure system, millibar low pressure system developed just off the northeast coast. But this is super far out. But the GFS model expects a nor'easter to develop a little bit earlier just off the northeast coast. Now, when it comes to this first snowstorm, the GFS model shows a completely different scenario, where this low pressure system, the first one at least, is bringing a lot less snowfall. But one thing that's pretty clear is that this storm is a lot stronger than what the European model is forecasting. While we're mostly seeing precipitation in the form of rain in this scenario associated with this low pressure system, this low pressure system could set up for a nor'easter pattern for the Northeast, where we, of course, see the pressure drop down to the 980s. So we could see gusty winds associated with this. And not only that, when this next trough moves through the Midwest, we could see just enough cold air move into the Northeast, so where we could see now a major snowstorm right around the Northeast. And this low pressure system does strengthen quite a bit, dropping down to 978 millibars right around the 8 to 9 day mark. So there's still a lot of time for the forecast to iron itself out. But what the GFS model is currently expecting is that this first trough will linger just off the northeast coast. So we could see a prolonged period of nasty conditions right around the northeast coast, where it's just going to be rainy, maybe some gusty winds, as well as, of course, cooler temperatures. And as this low pressure system lingers, of course, we're going to pay close attention to this trough that's expected to move through the Midwest and eventually interact with this potential nor'easter. And since this trough is bringing so much cold air with it, we could see potentially a powerful snowstorm and nor'easter right around the northeast coast by next weekend, which is definitely something important we're going to need to keep in mind over the next several days of that possibility. But there's still uncertainty with the forecast, because while the GFS model wants to linger this low pressure system, the European model wants to pretty much move this same low pressure system out to sea fairly quickly, and it's a lot weaker, this low pressure system. So of course it wouldn't have as high of a potential of dumping a heavy amount of snowfall. So the computer models are pretty are pretty different when it comes to their way of pretty much developing these next few low pressure systems, and their track and their projected path is very different as well. So there's still a relatively high level of uncertainty, even when it comes to this first low pressure system that's expected to reach the Midwest by right around the 4-day mark. And by the 4-day mark, you'd expect a little bit more certainty with the forecast, but the two main computer models are still showing pretty big variations with the forecast, where the European model wants to bring a major snowstorm to the Midwest with this first low pressure system by the Thursday timeframe, while a GFS model expects it to be primarily a rain event. So still a high level of uncertainty. What will determine if we will see a significant snowstorm in the Midwest is really how much cold air will be centered in the northern Midwest, and that will be determined by this ridge right here. If this ridge ends up moving a little bit further southward, then that would force a cooler air further southward, and as a result, we'd see more of that rain associated with this low pressure system overlap into the cooler temperatures, where the temperatures fall right around or below freezing for the precipitation associated with this low pressure system to fall in the form of snowfall and bring heavy snowfall as a result of the pressure gradient between this very cool ridge and this very warm and moist low pressure system. So we'd see snowfall heavy at times if the European model does expect if the European model scenario is correct with the snowstorm. Taking a look at the snowfall forecast when it comes to what the European model is forecasting, we do see that the European model wants to bring 6 to 12 inches of snow over a large area of Iowa. This includes northern Chicago as well as the southern portion of Wisconsin. You associated with this first low pressure system, you could see a heavy amount of snowfall throughout the northern Midwest, and this extends to the Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio as well, and Pennsylvania. And then we of course need to pay close attention to this next snowstorm, which is expected to bring some snowfall as well to the interior northeast as well as the northern portion of Michigan, and bring more snowfall on top of the snowfall you already experienced. Now, take a look at the GFS model. The GFS model is showing a very different scenario where the Midwest doesn't experience much of a major snowstorm at all. We do see some isolated snow showers right around the extreme northern portion of the Midwest, but it's far from a significant snowstorm. But it does become interesting by the time we approach next weekend, where of course there's that possibility of a major nor'easter and snowstorm that could develop that would bring feet of snow to the interior northeast. And while the major cities of the northeast aren't necessarily experiencing heavy snowfall, of course there's that possibility we could see that snow shift further eastward depending on how much cold air is behind this the second trough that's expected to move through by the weekend. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. Still a high amount of uncertainty. What will determine as well if it, whether or not we'll experience a nor'easter by the time we approach next weekend is if this low pressure system ends up lingering over the same area, because of course that would certainly bring a lot more instability to the second trough that's expected to move through, and that will create the conditions of a powerful nor'easter to develop, because this low pressure system will meander over the very warm Gulf Stream waters and bring a strong southerly flow. And once it interacts with that very cool Arctic air associated with the second trough moving through, then that will set up the pattern for a nor'easter and potentially a very significant snowstorm for much of the Northeast. So we're gonna need to pay close attention to that and see if this low pressure system will linger over the same area for several days, because the European model isn't necessarily agreeing with that. But taking a look, we see this low pressure system stays over the same area, and then once this trough comes through with the very cool Arctic air mass, we see a powerful storm right around the northeast. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days, and of course what will determine if we'll see snow in the Midwest really all depends on this ridge and how far south it moves. So we're going to need to pay close attention to the northwesterly winds over the next several days to really determine how much cold air will interact with this low pressure system. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days, but still a high level of uncertainty. But what I could say is that we likely will see some sort of significant snowstorm, whether it's this first snowstorm or the second snowstorm I was just talking to you guys about. It's becoming increasingly likely, at least somewhere in the Northeast and Midwest, will experience snowfall. We just need to determine where exactly and how much. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. Now, taking a look at the North Atlantic oscillation, we do see that we're expecting to be in negative phase. I've been talking to you guys about this oscillation over the past several videos, and I want to emphasize that we're more likely to see more significant jet stream dips and cold blasts move through the United States as a result of a negative North Atlantic oscillation moving through. So that's something we're going to need to pay close attention to going into the mid portion of December. And actually, another point I want to point out as well is that even after the nor'easter, we see that we're going to see a pretty significant jet stream dip associated with the GFS model right behind the nor'easter, thanks to the northwesterly winds that the nor'easter will impose. And we could see the potential of a snowstorm pattern develop by the time we approach the late December timeframe as a result of this nor'easter pretty much setting the stage for cooler temperatures to move further southward, which is definitely something that would be concerning and definitely great for snow lovers. So that's something to keep in mind as we approach the mid to late December time period. Now, taking a look at my forecast when it comes to the next potential major winter storm. So pretty much I combine my snowfall forecast from what the European model is saying with the GFS model, and this is sort of the consensus we get, at least for the total snowfall the northern United States should expect over the next week or two. So of course there's that possibility of a major winter storm impacting major cities such as Chicago, potentially Detroit could get involved, and of course in Northeast need to pay close attention to the possibility of a nor'easter by the time we approach next weekend. But I'll keep you guys updated as the confidence does rise with these forecasts. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys have a great day.